Bam.
This is Larry Strauss, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Last time we spoke, within a couple of words, I screwed it up and called your mom the wrong name. And you're like,
Oh,
that's all right. It's
everybody
all I've
did
been
that.
done it.
Everybody does that.
So Charlotte Ray. Ha ha. We got it
Yeah.
right this time. But yeah, so he was on the show and you were on before. We were talking about your mom and your dad a little bit and music and everything. But this time you're here to talk about a new book that you have out. So I guess let's acknowledge, hey, you have great parents. They're very successful. They're wonderful people. But today we're talking about you and your book. So I guess let's dive in and talk about the lasting impact in the classroom and what inspired you to write this thing.
Well, I've been teaching high school for 33 years, and in sometimes very difficult circumstances.
Mm.
And I've had a great career. For the last 20 years, I've been helping new teachers be successful and survive. And I thought I'd spread the love. And
Mm.
in a book, there's a terrible shortage of educators, and as my generation continues to get older and retire, there there don't seem to be enough people to take our place, and certainly not enough who last long enough to really take our
Mm.
place. The In many places, the career of a teacher is very short. A lot of people don't last, and for good reason. It's very difficult right now. It always has been, maybe more difficult now. I don't know. I don't even know how to measure that, but I know what I see. And I work with I'm working with a few teachers right now at a school where teachers quit mid-semester,
Wow.
midday sometimes. They like run out screaming. And it's not the kids. I mean, the kids are a challenge. The fact that,
Sure.
many of them are phone addicted, and they've been traumatized by various things, including having to go through the pandemic. But this the kids have always teenagers have always been a challenge. when i
Mm.
came when I started working in 1992, there were my kids had seen terrible violence in the streets. They'd
Yep.
seen their parents murdered. Like, trauma is nothing new for many of us
Yeah.
who work in high school classrooms. But I didn't get really good at handling kids and teaching. I didn't get good for 5 years. I was better at 10 years, at 15. But I was very lucky. I survived I just had the right circumstances. I was in a school that just like worked for me, and the kids responded to me, and I was just very lucky. I remember as a student teacher, I almost quit. And it wasn't that anybody was bad. I was just didn't think I was good, and I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere, and I was impatient with myself. So I try to share a lot of that with the teachers I work with. And so far, we haven't lost any of them. So far, they're all either still teaching, or some of them have retired already. But
Yeah.
and I've always, I've been skeptical over the years. Like, can a book really replace somebody, on the other end of a phone call, helping you out, commiserating with you, giving you a different perspective? And
Yeah.
but my hope is, here it is. My hope is that the book can, and
And then
the
there's
ti-
Lee.
the cover the cover is, I came up with it with my editor, that this it's a mountain climb.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I was worried, like, are people going to think this is a book on hiking? But I think the metaphor kind of works. And
Yeah.
if you've been a teacher, you understand.
Yeah.
And for me, it's still a climb. I've been very successful. I've taught two generations of students in some families. I was just right now I'm working a summer bridge for the incoming freshmen.
Hmm.
They're all like, they can't wait to tell me, my sister was your student, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, my mother, my father. And
Yeah.
it's needless to say, it's very, very rewarding to get to that place. And it's there for anyone who's committed and really loves this work. But it's not it's not always easy, and there's a lot that there's a lot I know I didn't get told when I was trained and when I was
Yes.
new. There was a lot that I wish I'd been told, and so, I try to be real. I try to be real as a teacher, and I try to be real, as a mentor with young and struggling teachers as well.
I'm interested. So one of the things I do every year is I go back to my hometown and I speak at the high school. And I usually do first semester, second semester. They're usually AP kids, AP government, usually. And
Yeah. Mhm.
the reason why I do this is because when I was a kid and someone would come back, it was just all bullshit. They would say things like, "Oh, college is hard. You have to study so hard." Like you didn't study when you were here. Like you weren't an academic. So I just then
Right, right,
adults would
right. That's
come
the
and
people rewrite their history. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then adults would come and they didn't know how to connect with at least me, like they were talking about stuff, but it's like they didn't know they didn't know what it was like to be me. And so I thought to myself, if I ever get the chance, I'm going to build, one of these kind of things where I come back and I try to be relatable. But the one thing I've figured out over time is as I've matured and the generation switches, like I started doing this when Kerry and Bush were running head to head for an election. And
Mhm.
now
Oh,
these
boy.
kids today, they have no clue, like anything about, like they might know like the basic history of it if they're on top of it and they love that kind of thing. But it's
Sure.
just a totally different world now.
I know.
And
Yeah.
my advice has changed because I've changed and they have changed.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to figure out how to get just in front of them and not tell
Mm.
them things like if you work hard and you apply your because that's just everybody says that shit. How do I give them something that they can hang on to?
Yeah,
And this is the last thing,
yeah.
then I'll shut up.
Oh.
I've done it for 20 plus years now, right?
Mhm.
And um, I don't know that I made a bit of difference. It's just I plant seeds and you just keep on planting them and you walk away and maybe someone will, but I don't ever expect anybody to come up and be like, Pete, you said something to me one time, but I'm hoping that this, if you plant
Yeah.
seeds, but is that foolish?
No. Not
Okay.
at all. In fact, um, I had a professor in college who used to say, I mean, okay, he referred to, evaluating students, like, did they learn what you wanted to teach them? Did they not learn? And he said, "Oh, we're all guilty of premature evaluation." He said, "If you want to know if you want to know if you got through to somebody, you may not know for 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
and they may never tell you. They may come back, and I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've been at the same school since 1992, and which is a great thing in many ways. For one thing, it sort of gives like just do whatever I want. Like the principals are come in and they just sort of leave me alone. But
Yeah.
also, because kids know where to find me. They know where to find me to come tell me if they want, if they have something they want to say. But even if they don't, like I know the influence. It's I think I have a line in the book about that. It's a
Mm.
teaching is an act of faith. Yeah, it's an act of faith in yourself, in what you're doing, and in the kids. They're going to be okay. And when you see them come back in 5 or 10 or 20 years, then the knuckleheads in your class who might seem hopeless to a teacher, like, okay, I remember this kid. This he's a lawyer now. He's a
Yeah.
police officer. He's a teacher. He's a real estate agent. Like he's doing something. He's an electrician, wiring up the new basketball Clipper arena. Like you like and you remember like, oh yeah, this kid was, he just seemed like he was never gonna he couldn't concentrate for more than 5 seconds. But and then the other thing it does for you as a teacher is you just keep trying. You
Mm.
never give up. You just keep trying. You know that somehow something could get through, even if it
Mhm.
doesn't look like it's getting through. It's that act of faith. Like I'm gonna keep trying, and I'm gonna get because there's nothing else for me to do anyway, and giving up is just not an option.
Yeah.
But again, I'm very fortunate. I don't know if you remember my family story, but my parent, I had an older brother, passed away 26 years ago,
Mm,
and he was developmentally disabled, schizophrenic. He had a lot of challenges, and back then, back in the 50s and 60s, there wasn't much available to my parents. My parents were kind of on their own with him, and he couldn't go to school. Now special needs kids, there's a law. You have to serve them. That didn't exist back then.
right.
And and my parents were told by people, including people in our family, that for their sake and for my sake, they should institutionalize him.
Mm,
And that was common. That was what people did if you had a child like that. In fact, my one of my idols, Arthur Miller, the playwright, had a son like that, and he did institutionalize him, which again, they were told by experts to do that. My parents refused. They
yeah.
never gave up on my brother. They never gave up on trying to help him, on trying to make him better, and it was mostly futile in terms of his condition. The life they gave him, though, was, profoundly better than what he would have otherwise had. But anyway, I've always thought like that. When I was named teacher of the month in LA in my school district a few years ago, and sadly,
Mhm.
my it was after my parents both passed away. But I kind of dedicated it to them. They taught me not to give up. They didn't give up on my brother. I didn't give up on my brother. And I remember my first year as a teacher, I had a kid who could not stop fighting. He could not stop antagonizing people. He'd been a gang member. He'd been he'd been incarcerated for murder. He was, his brothers and his father had all died on the streets, and he seemed just not to know how to not be angry and want to fight and want to hurt somebody. And I remember thinking, like, there seems to be no hope for this guy.
Yeah.
But I did not give I just something in me, I was just like, didn't give up. And I didn't let him know that I had any doubts. And somehow or other, like, it just clicked in for him. And he slowly, changed, and he hasn't been in trouble with the law since he was 16. And he's got a good job now. He's got kids. He's a middle class guy. He actually came back, and I was a basketball coach for 25 years. He came back and helped me, and then he coached the girls team, and then he went and coached college basketball.
Yeah.
While he was doing his job, and I mean, he was mentoring my students. Like, he was their hero. He was the guy who was there for them. You know,
Mm,
and I have to remind myself, like, that guy just seemed hopeless, and so and I don't blame teachers who feel that way, because it's like, if you're not used to it, it seems like you're on another planet, and these kids are nuts.
yeah.
But they're just teenagers. Being a teenager is like, it's like the worst time in your life. It should be the best time, and
Yeah.
as adults growing older and dealing with all that, there's a certain amount of, like, oh, these young people, they don't appreciate what they have. But I think we forget. I
Mm,
think we forget what it was like, partly because going through adolescence is so traumatic that you just, like, we're just there trying to survive, and so we have no perspective.
yeah.
I've actually had to explain to teachers as young as 22 or 23 the psychology of teenagers, and I always think, like, why am I explaining this to them? Why am I, like, I don't know what the word is, not mansplaining, like, geezer splaining this, what a
Yeah.
young person's like. And the truth is,
Jesus.
they don't know
Yeah.
what a teenager's like, even though they were a teenager 4 or 5 years before, because
Yeah.
it's almost like we have no perspective. I mean, we
Yeah.
remember going through it, but we have no perspective on
Yeah, I mean, you just grow so much, right? Like once your world opens up after high school, this is one of the themes I give to these are all seniors I'm talking to. And I'm like, your life is about to
it.
change.
Mhm,
Slow down, enjoy this time because you will never all be together like this ever again.
mm,
Like no matter what, people are
yeah,
going to move on, they're going to move out, they're going to die, all kinds of things are going to happen.
mhm,
So enjoy this time. But also, in 6 months, your life is going to be completely different. You'll be completely like way freer than, and a lot of them can't even understand that they're about to leave the state to go to college. And, their parents have their thumb on them because, they're good parents. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's all going to go away. And so I think that explosion of your world, I think definitely changes things.
yeah.
But you're right. As we get older, like one of the things I try to do, and look at my best, right? At my worst, I fail at this utterly, but I just try to extend grace to folks who need time, need space.
Mhm,
Maybe they are. Look, teenagers are chemically insane too. On top of everything else, they're hyper horny,
mhm,
and I couldn't focus. And I remember
right,
like those things where even if I wanted to do good, even if you made an impact on me, I'll be damned if I was going to let you know it. And that's
mhm,
another thing. It's like it's a competition with authority a lot of times for
yeah,
us because we just haven't sorted ourselves out.
yeah. That's funny, about regarding, like, they're not gonna tell you, and yeah, you cannot expect it. If you go there hungering for validation, forget it. You have to give it to
Yeah.
yourself, and I try to do that as a mentor to teachers, tell them, like, "You're doing great."
Mm.
I a guy would tell me once, like, "Yeah, my students asked me the other day, 'Why are you still here?'" Like, why do you put up with this?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that means thank you. That means thank God you're here. Nobody else would be here. Like,
Yeah.
we need you. You're a lifeline." So, you get the appreciation. You just have to know how to see what it is, what it looks like. 'Cause it doesn't, I mean, I have a very, I do a lot of banter with my students, and it's all like, they're constantly telling me, comparing me to Mr. Clean, and telling me how old I am, and like it's that kind of, and I
Hmm.
encourage it. and
Sure.
and so you have to know how to understand them, what they're saying, what they're, when they say, like, "Oh, your class is awful. I hate you." Like, they, they're meaning they're meaning something else,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they show, you see it. You see it in their effort. You see it in their, you know, hanging around your classroom, and, badgering you with questions and wanting to show you things all the time. The other thing about teenagers is they're kind of like, they don't want to be dependent on their parents. They don't want to. They need adult influence. They need adult interaction desperately, because they're trying to, like, create this adult out of this, like, jello of their, of their
Yeah.
childhood. And they need us desperately. I mean, they need adults desperately. And but they don't want it to be their parents, not because they don't love their parents, not because they don't, wouldn't do anything for their parents. Although in some cases, they don't. They have difficult relationships. Sometimes they have no parents. But even kids who had great dedicated parents, they don't want it to be their parents, because
Mm.
that's still being a kid. When you're admiring your dad and you're admiring your mom, you got to find other people. You need other people along with that, you know. And I've seen parents who really appreciate that. Like, they
Mm.
understand that, that you're not, teacher's not taking the place of mother or father, but that it's important. They need that validation. They need other adults to kind of
Mm.
say, like, "Yeah, you're okay, I can talk to you as an equal, given the right situation, given the right circumstance. I can respect you and then expect you to respect me." And, um, it's, like, really, really important for them. And I think I read somewhere, like, most teenagers have, like, just a few minutes of interaction with an adult each week, and that's not good. They're
Yeah.
often their parents kind of give up on it because they get rejected. They come home from school and, "Hey, how was it?" "Great, fine." Door slam, you know. And then the parents are like, and it's devastating as a parent.
Yeah.
It's so hard to lose your little
Oh my
cute
gosh.
kid who loved you so much. And I mean, I joke with my students. I tell them, like, you guys are cold. You guys are stone cold killers. You know that?" Like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, you guys all murdered some little kid who was you, and you
Yeah.
replaced him with,
You.
with who you are now." I said,
Yeah.
"You can't help it. It's what we all do. It's called growing up. But from your parents' point of view, like, oh my God, that sweet little kid, who used to, we used to do everything together, and I'd show them how to do everything, and they learned from me, and now they don't want to hear anything I have to say.
No.
It's so it's painful for
It
parents, and
sure is.
I empathize with it. I mean, I went through it with my own
Mhm.
kids, um, and and I often tell parents who don't have older kids, it's gonna be okay. Like, you're gonna find out. You'll find out if you did the work, if you had a good relationship. You will again. But in the meantime, teachers can, and if you become that
Mm.
teacher, the rest of it just gets easier. It just
Yeah.
does. Like, I mean, I have students misbehave. I have students who, try to test my patience in the classroom, but it's just different. It's just easier when you have that relationship with them. They won't take it too far, and it's very easy. And sometimes they're giving you a hard time because it's
Mhm.
they don't know how to say, "Mr. Strauss, I really need to talk to you now. I really need your undivided attention. I'm in agony. I need you to I need to talk to you about what's going on." And so they just they just do something inappropriate or ridiculous or
Yep.
disrespectful to some other student. And then you pull them out in the hallway. All right, what's going on? Instead of, like, don't you ever do that. It's like, all right, what's going on? And then hopefully they tell you, and then their whole demeanor changes, and then
Yeah.
they feel like they're in a different kind of space.
There's a thing with trust building, and it's easy to say these words like establish rapport and build trust, but to really leverage trust to your advantage, to really build. This is part of the spy world that I worked in. Was like, do I have trust with this person? I think I do, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they think and how they act. And so to develop that trust with the kid, to let them open up to you, to tell you something that's dangerous. I mean, if they're being
Mhm.
molested and they want to tell someone, they're not just going to say that out loud. Like that's a
Yeah,
deep, deep, deep thing, and they've got to expect their life is going to change if they tell you, and they're probably terrified
yeah,
of that. So
right.
there's
Because
all
we're
these things.
mandated reporters. Yeah.
Right, right. Like so, I was talking, and I'm pretty good at the trust thing. So I tell these guys, I'm like, I'm going to talk about, but I'm you from the future. So ask me questions. I'm going to tell you the exact answer. I'm not going to tell you the parent answer. I'm going to tell you the this high school kid answer. Like this is what I would tell me myself if I was here. And this
Mm,
one girl's like, sometimes I want to hurt myself. And so I'm just listening, and she's in front of
mhm.
everybody. She's saying this, not standing up, but she's in her chair.
Yeah,
And my
yeah,
buddy who hosts me at his school, he does the quiet call back, call, he types in a message, like, hey, we got a kid that's struggling. And,
yeah,
and now at least
yeah,
you have a chance. But that leap, I
yeah.
thought that if I had a chance, the thing I would do next time would be to tell that young person like how proud I was of her to be brave and to say that stuff
Mhm,
because we all
mhm.
struggle with these feelings, and
Right.
it's an amazing that trust is yeah, it's a neat thing to be able to leverage to the
Yeah,
kid's advantage.
yeah. And then it gets back to what you said before, that teenagers don't always know life's gonna get better, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I still remember a guy, his name was Dan Cox. He was a struggling actor. I guess he never became a famous actor, but he was good though. And I
Yeah.
knew him when I was a teenager, and I was doing comedy then. And he was kinda in my circle. And, I think I was either 17 or 18, and he must have sensed my angst
Mm.
about and I didn't like to show it, but I mean, if nothing else, I was in angst because I had so little understanding of the opposite sex, who I was
Mm.
attracted to, that
Mhm.
I was always, like, so stressed trying to, deal with dating and
Oh my
girlfriends and
gosh.
sex. I
Yeah.
just, like, I didn't I maneuvered in that. I maneuvered so clumsily, and like that. I mean, it still astounds me when I think about it. And I'm not that I've overcome all the clumsiness either, but at least I understand it. And um, but he must have sensed something in me. And I remember him saying at a party, like,
Mm.
"Hey, man, life's gonna get better, man. Like when you're 25, you're gonna realize, like, man, everything is." And he was not. What I guess what the reason I remember it is like it's like he was a struggling actor.
Mm.
It's not like he had everything going for him, but
Mhm.
he was so relaxed and like, hey, I have freedom. I guess he had a side job that was good, and he had a girlfriend and who he loved. Like he just was, and he's just like, man, it's gonna get better. It's gonna, and and that's what's so sad about teenagers is they don't all have the imagination to
Mm.
do that. Like you can tell them, yeah, in 5 years it'll be different, and they understand that. They understand the passage of time, but they don't always have the imagination to see their way out, and that like yeah, in 5 years you're not gonna care as much that your dad condemns you, that is
Yeah.
disappointed in you or whatever, condemns you your sexual identity or your life choices or whatever. And yeah, it's so important to let them know that. And it's
Yeah.
also to make them feel safe telling you that, hey, sometimes I don't want to live anymore because
Right.
we can help them, but not if they stay silent.
Yeah, boy, that's a lot. When you were saying that, you got me reminded. I had John Mosley. I don't know if you know who he is. He's sort of local to you. He is one of the premier community college
You
coaches
say
here
John
in California.
John Lewis?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
John Mosley. Mosley. He coaches East LA.
Oh, Mosley. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
he
He had that great show. The what was it called?
yes,
About coaching his
last chance you,
basketball. Yeah,
last
you
chance you.
let
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
great.
I had him on the show. And one of the things that's always struck me is that he's part preacher, and he's a basketball coach. He's really got,
Oh, yeah.
you're a basketball coach. You get it. Like you got to motivate your guys. But he would say these things that I would want a guy like that on my side coaching me. Oh my God. Like
Yeah,
this guy loved these guys. He's like, I'm not
yeah,
making you run because I'm mean. I'm making you run because I love you.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, I know what it takes. You have to do
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
I'm desperate for you to succeed. There's nobody in the way. And it's like, what do you mean
yeah,
there's nobody in the world that wants you to succeed more? I want it more than you do, and oh
yeah.
my God, it's like, wow,
Right.
and these kids have every last chance you, these kids have every reason to quit. And they've
Mhm.
never had someone on their side like him before. And he,
Right.
for those that are able to, even if it's 5 years, like you're saying, down the road, 10 years, it transforms them. Like you can do these things. You really can just say, these are the hard things, right? Like we all have, talk about like in the podcasting world, like we have dragons that we have to kill. I'll point them out for you. It doesn't matter what I tell you. You have to go kill that dragon. You have to go do these things.
Mhm.
And if you don't, then it doesn't matter. Do something else because you're not going to do this. You have to go out and do these things. And that kind of directness, like this is how this is going to be, and getting ahead here in this way, it's not easy. It's not easy in any direction you go, but you can do things to improve your chance to do things, right? And I think that's a big role with teachers is trying to not get too far ahead, like I was saying earlier, but point out the dragons, point out like the hard work where it needs to be, so that you have a chance of building that muscle up, so you can take the steps to
Mhm.
do the hard work that allows you to have the rewards.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And again, it's something teachers have to know for themselves, that if you do the work, if you stick it out, if you survive,
Mm.
you and you care, you can get better, and it can be just, it could just be such a great experience
Mm.
to master this, and then if you do it for 10 years or 15 years and then you go do another career, you'll go there with confidence. You'll know,
Right.
and you can do what a lot of people can't. What you were saying about coaches, I
Yeah.
actually work with a lot of young coaches too.
Oh, do you?
I
Okay.
do some athletic administration now. I shouldn't say I don't coach anymore. Um, I'm like Michael Corleone. They
Yeah.
keep pulling me
Can't get
back
away.
in.
Yeah.
Uh, every time my school like has a crisis, like during COVID, the girls basketball coach wouldn't get vaccinated, and they had a vaccine mandate for our district. So they had no coach at the last minute. So they're like, "Hey, Strauss," So I coached the girls team that year. Uh, a few years before, right before COVID, there was a big blow up with the boys varsity coach, who I'd actually hired to replace me. He's a
Mm,
great guy, but he like lost his mind during a game one time when the refs made a bad call,
yeah.
and he quit. Then he came back. They fired. Anyway, they mid-season, so they called me back. But uh, and now I coach track and cross country, which is just like pure joy, because the athletes, they are what they are. They work as hard as they're willing to work, and they get the results that they deserve in a way. But there isn't as much, there isn't quite as much intensity as basketball. But anyway, when I work with young basketball coaches, I constantly have to tell them and remind them, you know, like you're not coaching at the highest level, okay? Because they're not. There's a few people who are coaching at the highest level in high school. The blue chip athletes, where maybe a few of them might one day play professional basketball. You're just not, you're not in that
Hmm.
world. I've had a few guys who maybe had a shot over the years, but now it's less and less. The talent is all concentrated in certain schools. And
Mm,
so that's not what you're doing. You're not preparing them to be professional athletes. And in 10 years, no one's going to come back and say oh, that winning that game changed my life. That play you drew up or whatever. It's not that's not They're going to come back and say, you influenced me, you made me become the man I am. That's what you're doing. You're a teacher.
mm,
Coach in high school anyway is a teacher. And I mean, any good coach is a teacher, probably even
sure.
professionally. But you're not just teaching the sport, you're teaching life. And I tell them, like, where your players learn the most is when they lose. That's your opportunity. Teach them how to lose, because
Mm,
there's going to be losses in life. If they're going to get through life without self-destructing, they got to deal with adversity. They got to deal
right.
with like heartbreak and frustration, and that's your chance. If you win every game and you just stomp on your opponents, it's fun.
Yeah.
I love it. I love, when I used to go through the schedule, I'd check off the games I knew we were going to win, and I look forward to them. Like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
fun, it's relaxed, it's not a lot of work. But the games where I knew we were either, overmatched, or where, we could win or we could lose, I knew that was where I was going to put in the work, and the real work of teaching these guys like how to get through adversity and how to get through those battles. And
Yeah.
those are the guys who come back, like the police officer who had to fire his weapon and then go through the trauma afterwards. His partner almost killed, in the during the and he's going through all this, and he's like, but if you prepared me, you helped prepare me to go through those moments where I don't know what I'm going to do next, and I had confidence in myself.
Right.
So those are the great opportunities, and that's why somebody like Coach Mosley is so great, because he knows
Yeah.
some of his guys have a chance to get to the next level, but probably none of them are going to become pros. It's very
Right.
unlikely. Maybe overseas, but the numbers just don't. I was just you know it's just
Hmm.
very unlikely. And actually, the whole JUCO thing. If remember Larry Johnson, the guy, the nickname was Grandma. I think played for
Yeah.
the Knicks. He played for UNLV. he was a junior college transfer from
Yeah.
somewhere in Texas, and he was a great player. But those guys don't really exist anymore. So a college coach told me, now if you're a blue chip athlete, you don't fall through the cracks anymore. You got
Mm-hmm.
handlers and you got tutors, and like there isn't this like great player out there who no one's found yet.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you're 10 years old, everybody knows who the great players are. So most of those guys on that Last Chance U show, it's about life for them.
Yeah.
It's about,
Yeah.
are they gonna go play Division 1 basketball and then get a 4-year education paid for if they're smart and they take advantage of it. And playing basketball at that level is great. It's fun. But again, you're preparing for life. What are
Yeah.
you going to do after
Yeah.
basketball? And
Yeah.
that's what's great about him. That's what I admire about him.
Yeah. And he also has that, to play in the league. It's let's get you away from where you're at now. Get you going forward. Yeah, Division 2 ball, great. Division 1 ball, great. Europe, great. Let's do all these things, but
Yeah.
right here, right now, you have to change your attitude. You can't let yourself defeat yourself. Oh my gosh, he's so good at that stuff. One of the things too, I guess this is kind of a
Yeah.
Mosley-esque thing, and you must have a thing for this. It's like when I was a kid, as a freshman, and for whatever dumb reason, a couple of senior dudes kind of just nudged me just a little bit, 'cause I'm a young, and I'm young for my age, right? So I was 13 for over half of my freshman year,
Mm.
and I'm just spazzy. I love playing sports and stuff. So a couple of these jock guys, just for an instant, they weren't my friends, but one of them's like, "Hey, it's not cool to run because I'm running between classes. I was so gassed up. I was like, bro, and he's like, yeah, man, don't run between classes. And then another one just grabbed me one day. He was prepping the ball fields. He played varsity baseball, and he's like, come help me do this. And it was like the coolest thing ever. And I had a couple little things like that, where these older kids had just gave me a tiny bit of coaching, right? And I always thought, man, that was so impactful in how I saw high school and the
Mm.
way I behaved and everything. That I encourage these seniors that I talk to. I'm like, go find a freshman, even if it's the dorkiest one around, and figure out something
Mhm.
to do with them. Just touch them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if to take the advice, but it's an opportunity to start to learn about leadership too. And I use this in the army too. When I was teaching source operations, I would grab one of the senior counterintelligence agents. That was my field, and I would say, hey, this guy here is struggling. You got to tune him up, and I mean in a good way.
Mhm.
Not go fucking beat his brains in. And make sure you read his reports. Have him read yours. You guys figure out how to get better at this because you're not
Mhm.
great at it yet. And man, it made such a difference. You would see that team gel when they realized they were up against it and they weren't doing well and they
Mhm.
weren't making the standard. And they really, these are professional people now, so
Mm.
so they can handle. They get past ego. But I think even with kids, giving them opportunities to stick their hand out, be a leader, I think it's a wonderful thing for kids who aren't in scouts, they aren't in a Christian youth group like that. They don't have a chance to really learn about leadership.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's really one of the keys to being a great teacher too, is like
Mm,
you gotta bring out the best in students. One
yeah.
of one of the chapters in the book is success is a means and an end.
Mm,
Everyone, you want your students to be successful, but the best way to get them to be successful is to give them a path to success, is to give
mm,
them something they can do that so they can feel successful, because it success feeds on success. I had a kid who he was making up. We have a thing in our district, one of the many one of the many scams that school districts have to up the graduation rates. You know,
hmm
their administrators are just like all about everyone passing and everyone graduating, which is a good thing. They should be
Sure.
like
Yeah.
there should be that conflict where a teacher's like, well, I'm going to hold them accountable, and the principal's like, yeah, okay, but what else can they do? And not pressure, not put pressure
hmm
on you, but advocate for the kid. Like if the kid knows somebody's on their side, it helps. And I don't mind pushing. I don't mind going up against that, and because I appreciate you know appreciate the administrative support. Um, but anyway, so we have this thing where if they have a D at the end of the year, the end of the semester, they can go for 3 days during winter break, and the teacher provides them a path to getting a C. Like,
Mm.
here's what you need to do, and they sit there for like 6 hours for 3 days,
Yeah.
and teachers who need a little extra holiday money come in and do it. Like, not mandatory for the teachers, but so anyway, I came in and I gave, and this one kid, Jaime, and it's just a really nice kid, and smart, but just like he's one of those boys who just can't complete assignments and turn them in. He's disorganized. He gets unmotivated. He gets bursts of motivation, and then they just sort of fade. Anyway, he
Hmm.
came there and he sat there, and he probably has some attention issues too, because like after a while he was just like, like he couldn't do 6 hours. He was just like, struggling trying to work for
Hmm.
that long. It's like his muscle wasn't there yet. So
Right.
anyway,
Yes.
after a while, he was like, "Do you have anything else I can do? I can't read anymore." I said, "All right, I got something for you." And I printed out a blank map of the United States. Now I'm an English teacher, but I love geography. So,
Sure.
and you know, and so I hand them the blank map. I said, "All right, fill in whatever you know." And he's like, "Oh no, man, I can't." I said, "No, no, just even if you only know one or two, or if you don't know any, just let me know." And he goes, he got California, Texas. I think he put Arizona where Nevada is. I think he figured out Florida. Anyway, he didn't know where anything is. And it's a little bit harder if you live in Southern California because you're not near another state. I guess
Right.
if
Yeah.
you live
Yeah.
in you live in New York City, you probably
Yeah. You
know
got
where
Canada.
Connecticut
Easy. Yeah.
is, and New Jersey. Anyway, maybe I don't know. So I and then I hand them, then I printed out a map with all the states and all the state codes, and I gave him the state
Mhm.
codes. I said, "All right, now fill in what you didn't get right." So he
Yeah.
fills it, and now he's learning the state codes too. And then when he's done, I said, "All right, turn it over. Here's another blank map." You know, and he got like 7 of them. He remembered 7 of them from copying. All right, now fill in the rest. And we did that like 5 times, and on the sixth
Mm.
time, he got every state.
Right.
He knew all 50 states after that in like an hour.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he knew it wasn't that he, knew the map of the United States. It was that he succeeded, that
Yeah.
he got something perfect. And I could just see him like suddenly become motivated to want to do something because he'd had a taste of success.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just seemed it seemed almost dumb on my
Yeah.
part as a teacher to like, here, do a map. Like, but it wasn't that, it was success.
Yeah.
And I remember another time when all the honor roll students got called out of my room. They got called out of everybody's classroom for something, I forget what it was, but so there were the students who left in the room were all the struggling students, the non-honor students. And
Mm.
and I remember I think I didn't want to continue the lesson because I would have to do catch up and all this. So I just like pivoted to something else. And I forget if it was like a grammar thing or a vocabulary synthesizing thing, but I remember these boys, it was almost all boys, the struggling students. I remember it's like they just came out of their insecurity because they were the smart ones in the room now, and they were
Mm.
getting stuff right, and they weren't afraid of being judged. Like they'd spent their
Sure.
lives having people laugh at them because they got a word wrong, and they felt dumb, and teasing each other because that's what they do. They all like
Sure.
it's like they all call each other stupid, and they all say they're stupid. It becomes like this joke to cover up how hurt they are, how bad they
Yeah.
feel about that, how insecure
Yeah.
they are. And but I just remember like, wow. So that really taught me like, gotta find a way that the kid who's not who's not the sharpest one can
Hmm.
know something, can get something right, can be the guy who has the answer or who figures the thing out. And I mean, it means so much to them to get, it's like play to their strength, find out what the kid's strength is, somehow play to it because
Yeah.
success is everything.
Hmm.
The things that kids learn in high school, how much of it does anyone remember? How much of it does anyone remember? The
Yeah.
skills you acquire, you might continue to use, but the actual knowledge is that's not what it's about.
Mm.
It's like, do they come out of high school knowing how to learn,
Right.
knowing, having
Yeah.
a curiosity to want to learn things, because now you can learn anything on your own. Literally everything is available to us. So what are you going to do? Are you going to choose to be a learner, or are you going to, just choose to distract yourself and kill time and, you know, and so are they learners? Do they have that intellectual curiosity? Um, you know, like it's more about their how they
Mm.
feel about themselves
Yeah.
as intellect. Do they have the confidence that that do they do they believe that they have something worth saying, and that that it's worth it to take the time to say it well, all those things. That's why I can't stand English teachers who teach students that there's one right way to do this, there's one right
Sure.
way to write this. They do it, and I apologize if you're one of these teachers, but in my view, they do it because they're lazy, because they want to
Mm.
grade work based on a single criteria. They want to say, like, all right, is the thesis statement the third sentence in the first paragraph? And did they use this kind of adjective? And it's like, you're just taking the life, you're sucking the life out of these kids'
Yeah.
writing and their imagination and their articulateness. Like, find a voice. Who are you, and how do you say something as you on paper? and
Yeah.
and and then you could get into, like, I love going through students work, and sometimes I'll do it in front of the whole class, share it on show them, like, do you really need that word? Do you need that word? What if you did
Hmm.
this? What if you did, and hey, you know what, I'm not saying you have to do it that way. I'm saying, do you like that better?
Right.
Your way wasn't, I mean, maybe there's some grammar we got to correct, but it's not like your way is wrong and my way is right. Which one do you like better? And
Right.
you want my sentence? Okay, it's yours now. And you know, uh, I tell, like, you got to know who your favorite writers are,
Yeah.
because those are the ones you want to imitate. Said,
Yeah.
imitation's not plagiarism. You plagiarize.
No.
You take
Yeah.
somebody's exact words, that's
Yeah.
plagiar that's academic fraud. But if you say, how would um, how would John Steinbeck write this? How
Right.
would E.L. Doctorow write this? How would
Sure.
Maya Angelou write this? How would Marquez write? Like, and imitate their style. I said, you're not, after a while, it's gonna, well, first of all, it's not, you're not, it's, they didn't write it, you wrote it. And
Right.
second of all, if you do, if through imitation, you're gonna become who you are anyway. Because that's how you
Yeah.
learn how to talk. You learn
Yeah.
how to talk by imitating the people around you. I mean, it's hilarious when you listen to a little kid learning to talk. It's hilarious. It's like they're mocking us. You go,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. They do all the
Hmm.
inflections, and we go like, "Oh my god, do I sound like that?" Because they're like little parrots. And but then they get their own voice. Then they
Yeah.
become who they are, and that's how it works as a writer too. And
Yeah.
and it's so easy, like, to win over kids when you tell them that, when you
Yeah.
say that to them, they respond. And
Mm.
again, it's not that they're going to stop testing you, and after you make this impassioned plea for how to do an assignment, and you go, do you have any questions, and the kid goes, yeah, can I go to the bathroom? It's not like that's never going to happen again. you know
Right.
but
Yeah.
but but that stuff is trivial, and
Yeah.
and it's easy to deal with. Kid comes
Yeah.
in late, he's in a bad mood, and you can address it, and it's easy. And no-
Yeah.
and if you if you show you care and that you understand them, they
Yeah.
respond. And I try to convey that to the teachers I work with every day, and
Yeah.
uh, and and it's very effective for them.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. It's interesting the things that you hold on to. You said a whole bunch of stuff there that it's just great. When I was a kid, there was this older kid that would get in trouble a lot, but he was really smart, and we knew that because the teachers told us this kid's really smart. So you see him misbehaving, but he's smart. And so I'm like, I want to be like that. I don't want to misbehave. I want to be a good kid. But like they're like, he got in trouble and he had to write down all the states and all the capitals. And he
Mhm.
did it within like 4 minutes. And I'm like, how fast can I do that? And then I wanted to be ready in case I got in trouble. So I knew every
Yeah.
president, I knew every vice president, and a lot of this stuff is still stuck with me. Like it's just burned into my head, and I concentrate. When I was in the army
Mm.
and I first got into basic training, it was my first day, like at basic training, and they were asking me questions for things I couldn't possibly know the answer to. And they know who everybody is. And so we're all standing in line waiting to get food. And if you got the question wrong, they asked you, you had to go back to the back of the line and wait your
Mm.
turn to eat, you know? And so that part of my brain switched on, and I'm like, I'm going to memorize everything everybody says, like these 10 dudes in front of me, because they're only asking just a couple of small questions. And it just so happened
Oh, yeah.
they asked me a question, and it was like, who is your command sergeant major? Who's your battalion command sergeant? And I shouldn't know that because I just had gotten there. I hadn't even time to look at the board, right?
Mhm.
But there's no excuse. And I said the guy's name, and the drill sergeant looked at me. They just gave me a drive on. But it set the tone. So that thing
Yeah.
that I had prepared for in the fourth grade, it has paid the bills so many times where I had the basics of that knowledge down because I had, just taught myself to know all these things in
Mhm.
case, I ever got in trouble like Jim Telepack, which is a ridiculous thing. And the other thing I was going to say on top of that is, you know, I didn't behave very well as a kid. I was spazzy. I was sad. I was all the things, right? But also was a good student. I was popular. I did all right. But it was these little things like my literature teacher said, "Look, I know you're not reading these books. You don't have to try to fool me, but I know you're reading, so just keep reading. And if you want to be a good writer, read
Mhm.
good writers. Just read good writers, and go pick whatever
Yeah.
you want. I don't even care if you write a report. Participate in class, great, but don't try to trick me because I know you're not reading that stuff. So go read what you
Yeah.
read. Keep reading. And he allowed me to love reading.
Mm.
And the other thing I was going to say was, you mentioned Steinbeck, right? I don't memorize a whole lot of poems, but yeah, if you want to understand Steinbeck, how can I describe something vast in 2 words or it's like 3 words? And in that Travels with Charlie book, he has these couple of moments where he throws out he's a star rattled sky. And it's just
Yeah.
like, man, I could never write that way,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
can, you can try. And then he said, in my
Yeah.
flypaper youth. And flypaper youth is such a Steinbeckian kind
Wow.
of way to,
Great.
it,
That's a great line. Yeah.
it would take 100 words for me to say that. And so when I
Yeah.
think about like trying to teach a kid something, like find these great examples and
Yeah.
then emulate, right? Like, how do I find these
Yeah.
make anything into a verb?
Well,
I don't care, just write it and do it. Go.
mhm. Well, and that's the great well, 2 things, yeah. That's the
Mhm.
great thing about revision. That's the thing about writing.
Mhm.
I often say to students, "Are you more comfortable writing or speaking?" And a lot of them say, "Oh,
Mhm.
talking." Like, they feel insecure when they write. I say, "Well, my job is to flip that because writing you should be more confident in your writing because you don't have to show it to anyone until it's ready. And when you
Mhm.
speak, you have to do it on the spot, and if you say something confusing or ill-informed or all you can do is restate it, but you can't unsay it. But you can unsay something you've written because you have time to change it.
Yeah.
Maybe not a chat or whatever, but texts are there's a little more pressure. Although, but anyway, you can revise it. And
Yeah.
one of the things I love doing is showing students just what you can do when you revise. And
Yeah.
I help a lot of kids every year write their essays for college. And so for the UCs, they have to write 4 of these short essays,
Hmm.
and they have to be 250 to 350 words. And sometimes a kid will go like, "Oh, I got this one, and I think it's really good, but it's like 480 words. Ah, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do."
Yeah.
And I'm always like, come on, like it's easy. 130 words is easy to cut. They're like, "No, no, it's
Yeah.
really good." Yeah, yeah. All right, we're gonna put
Yeah.
this thing on a diet now. And then you see how like those 100 words that you need to say what Steinbeck says with
Yeah.
flypaper
Yeah.
childhood, then you start to pare it down, and you may not get Steinbeckian, but you're gonna
Right.
you're gonna realize like, wow, that is really cool. That's just a boom, 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 like the efficiency of it, and the points you're able to make like quick, like whiplash the reader.
Yeah.
And they're so proud to see that like their words, their ideas shrunk down, like nectar. Instead of drinking the
Yeah.
juice, you go to the neck, like that thick syrupy, like the essence of it. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it can be a very powerful experience. And I've seen kids then who've done that work with me. I see them doing it with other kids. They're like, "Oh,
Mm.
yeah, no, you don't need this word, and you can say it with this," and
Yeah.
they start to become editors, and they start to really enjoy that.
Oh,
My
that's so
my
cool.
That happened to my daughter when she was in
Yeah.
middle school. I worked with her on her writing like that, and she's like, "Dad, you shouldn't have taught me that." Now I'm like, that's like all anybody wants from me. It's like I'm busy all day editing people's papers.
Hold up that book real quick so we can promote this thing
Yeah,
again here. So this is Larry's book, right? The
yeah,
Lasting Impact of Classroom on Amazon. There's the link down below. You know what I always say, buddy, read, buy two, get you and another teacher and read this damn thing, and see if it
yeah.
can help you. Look how great that is. Look,
And
that's a good book.
yeah, if you're an administrator, buy it for your whole staff.
There you go. Yeah, 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 yeah. The last thing I want to get into before we run out of time is, um, and look, I'm not an administrator, I'm not a teacher, right? But I know these people, and so I see these things, and it bothers me. So if you're gifted with math, boy, they just lay it on you, and more math and all that stuff. But if you struggle with it, like, well, you're just going to have to figure it out and take dummy math and all this other stuff, right? If you are good at speaking publicly, you get an A in the class, and it's easy, not a problem. Just like if you're good at algebra. But if you're bad at algebra, but if you're bad at speaking in front of people, they bend over backwards to help these people. We'll all leave the room. There'll be nobody, all these concessions for someone who's, got
Yeah, yeah,
stage
yeah.
fright or nerves or whatever.
Accommodations, they call them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a weird thing to me that we have such an imbalance in terms of like how, like, cause I'm not terrible at math, but algebra wasn't my thing. I've got a master's degree and I've done PhD work.
Yeah.
I've never done anything higher than pre-algebra in traditional school. I've taught myself stats. I've
Mhm.
taught myself a lot of things, but I'm just never going to learn algebra. Every time I try to tackle it, it tackles me, right? But you put me in front of a
Uh-huh.
room, I can speak extemporaneously, so I can get an A
Oh,
there,
yeah.
but I would struggle to even just do the less than minimum. And so, why do we have that imbalance in how we
Mm.
treat something that really, to
Mm.
me, maybe I'm too dumb to do math. Let's say that that's true, but you're not too dumb to speak in front of a
Well,
group, right? So why
yeah.
do we treat it like that?
Well, good question. I think,
Yeah,
first of all, math is, I don't know how math teachers do it, because
me neither.
my experience, whenever I've subbed a math class, and there aren't a lot of them struggle. A lot of math
Yeah,
teachers struggle. The math teachers at my school are pretty miserable all the time. They're frustrated. Whenever I've subbed a math class, like you give out a problem or something, and there's always like a couple of kids who are done in like 10 seconds. So
right.
now you got like, okay, I got to keep challenging them. And then there's somebody else who looks like in 100 years they'll never get the same thing that this other kid. And plus they feel humiliated because
Oh
this
my
this
gosh.
this other kid is like, you know, like I took a in college, community college. I took a trig class, I think it was.
Yeah,
I worked so hard. Hours and hours and hours to get a C in that class. and there were a couple of high school boys who were taking the class because it was
Yeah.
in the summer, and they were like these nerdy little boys, like with like playing with their digital watches, and looking like, you know, and they get their tests back, and it was like 100%,
Of
100%.
course. Right.
Like these boys who were seemed so, you know, just like so immature and unformed, and yet it
Yeah.
was easy for them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think in a way, like a lot of people haven't figured out quite what to do about it. I would hope that through computers and AI that maybe there's a way to get I would imagine some students who struggle with math might
Hmm.
prefer not having everyone watch them struggle with math, and um, be able to do the work to finally get it. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I know that there are I know a lot of teaching is affective. I think I have a whole chapter in the book, in fact, about
Mm.
that. The emotional component of it. You learn when you're emotionally open. You learn
Mm.
when it feels like it's part of your emotional life. The
Yeah.
affect and the intellect are not separate. They're integrated very closely.
Yeah.
And so my older daughter had a math teacher in high school who really changed everything for her. She became a great math student. And partly it was just like he was so passionate about it. He didn't care that the kids in the room didn't share his passion. He was like stupid passionate about it. Like there was nothing more important in the world than the beauty. There was nothing more beautiful in the world than the balance of this equation, and how it had two answers or whatever it was. There was nothing more beautiful to behold than that, and it became infectious, and the kids really appreciate that and respond to it. Um, and I mean, I know we have a lot of interventions to try to help kids with math. I don't know
Hmm.
how successful they are. I don't know that people have figured out exactly um, how somebody like you or me, or somebody who does not have that affinity, how to get us. And maybe it's just that we're not going to, and that
Yeah. Yeah. No. Right. Yeah.
they're approaching the thing wrong. My younger daughter's an art teacher. She teaches just a few miles from where I teach, and
Sure.
not every some of the kids in her class just don't have any talent for drawing. I mean, they can get better,
Right.
or whatever the art is. They can get better at it. They can learn. There's a lot they can learn, but they're not going to be the kid who's just oozing with artistic talent. I mean, we all have talents. We all have our genius. We all have our intelligences. Including
Yeah.
athletes. That's that
Sure.
very profound form of intelligence. But we accept the fact that some kids in a painting class, they're going to be able to do the assignment, and they should be able to earn an A in the class, but they're not going to do something that somebody would pay for, would buy. They're
Right.
not going to make art that's great. And maybe math is the same. Maybe we're
Yeah.
just judging people wrong, and that's the problem. I mean, you don't you're the fact that you don't understand sine and cosine, and cotangent, and
Right.
you probably haven't missed it in your life.
I
you
have
know and
not.
and and you have not. And nor have I. And I
Yeah.
did actually learn it, but I have no idea what it is now. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I love looking at my kids' homework,
Right.
students' homework, like in my homeroom class, if they're working on it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I have no idea what that. They
Talk
like
about the other
that.
talk about the other side of that equation though. So that kid who's just like 10
They're like,
seconds on a math problem, and now he's got to go stand in front of the room and
mhm,
extemporaneously or prepare a speech and deliver it and just cannot for the life of him or her
mhm.
get up there and do it. How do you deal with that? How do you give that chance look, I get like the kid who can't paint, he's painting, he's
Yeah,
all the effort in the world, he gets an A, right? Whatever that looks like. What
yeah,
does that look like to where you take a kid, because anybody can speak in front of a group and get over it. And maybe at first there's nobody in the room, then maybe they do more speeches,
yeah,
but that seems like an overcomable thing. We're not talking like dribbling
yeah,
drills here either, right? Just like, can you get up and give a speech?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the hardest thing for a lot of those math genius kids is the work that I do. Like, they hate it.
Mm,
They'll do it, but like analyzing a poem,
yeah,
because math is so satisfying to them because there's an answer and they can get it, they can figure it out. But when you give them a poem and there's ambiguity,
yeah,
they're like, what am I supposed to do? What's the formula for
mm,
finding the metaphor? Well, no,
hmm,
you have to just, you're informed by your own life, by your own knowledge, existence. You have to, there's no, like, you do A and then B and then C. I mean, you can do that as a teacher. Your job is to give them a system or help them create their own system.
yeah,
But no, they hate that. A lot of those math thinkers, they're like, oh no, he's going to give us another, oh no, like, we're reading a short story and it's like, oh no, he's going to ask me what the subtext is of
oh,
it.
yeah,
And, and it's just hard for them. And
yeah,
all you can do is show them, encourage them, just like keep them in this environment
mm,
that's where they're exposed to it a lot, and try to relate it to their life, to their existence, give them examples that speak to them. I mean, that's all you could do. And then again,
yeah,
like we said earlier, you may not know if you got through to them. They may
yeah,
not show it in the class. They may try, but they may not really show that glimmer, but it may come to them, you know.
yeah.
I had a couple, they got married, they met in my school and they got married, had a bunch of kids, and I remember they came back and told me, like, "Strauss, you ruined movies for us." It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So, yeah, like, now when we watch a movie together after the kids are asleep, it's like we pause it every 30 seconds and talk about, the imagery and the visual metaphor and, the
Yeah.
character development, and, like, we
Sounds like you're doing wonderful.
can't just sit through a movie anymore, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but, when they were in class, they weren't necessarily showing that,
right.
but now they can do it, and
Yeah,
they wanna do it. So,
yeah,
premature evaluation, you
yeah,
gotta
yeah,
you
yeah,
gotta
yeah,
beware of that.
yeah. Wait till they realize that when they watch a movie, almost every scene is an homage to a scene from the movie's past. And so, like that
Right.
great scene at Chicago Union Station when in Untouchables when the baby's going down the stairs. That's almost shot for shot the same movie as Battleship Potemkin. They have this huge, exact same kind of setup.
Oh, wow.
And then
I
it
didn't
just
know
blows
that,
your
yeah.
mind when you realize, like, what were they trying to say? Because now the subtext is based upon possibly another subtext. There's
Mm,
like a hand wave
right,
there, or when someone sits down and the lighting is exactly like The Godfather when Michael Corleone sits
right.
down for the first time, and you're just like, oh man! And you see that image all the time in movies. And so, yeah, I love
Mhm.
that. I love that. I love that you give people that ability to see more than just the picture, see all of it, right?
Right,
And to know like when
right,
when the
right.
turn is going to come, but the turn doesn't. Here's one of my favorite things. I'm going to shut up and we can wrap it up. But I love the thought of a turn phrase. So like instead of a twist of fate, I think it's almost worse to have a fated twist. Like this thing was
Oh,
coming
I
and you
like
just
that.
never knew it. And so it's less
Yeah.
happens. It's like at the end of Apocalypto when the Spaniards show up and you're like, oh, that's a fated twist. Like everything just
Oh,
changed
I
and
like that.
nobody had any idea. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
By
I
the way,
love those things.
there's a rhetorical name for that. It's called
Oh,
a
is it really?
it's called chiasmus, yeah.
Okay. That's
Those who matter don't mind, those who mind don't matter. It's like that when
uh-huh.
you reverse it like that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You
What's good for the goose is good for the gander, but is what good for the gander good for the goose? Like it's
Right.
heavy.
That's
You're
what
like, oh
I always
man.
tell my students, like, you could turn anything into a chiasmus, but does it really make sense, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It
Right,
only
alright,
works if it works.
it only works something like, are you working hard or hardly working is another one people
Yeah,
love to
yeah,
say.
yeah.
But yeah, it's fun to do that. Fun to do that wordplay.
Well, what a fun thing having you on the show, man. I really appreciate it. Hold
Yeah,
that book up again so everybody can
great
see.
talking to
That's where you go. And I know it's going to be great because we just had this wonderful long conversation. You guys all get that. Just buy the damn thing. All right. Get to work and
you.
do that. Um, Wonderful.
And
Anything in
stay in the
closing?
classroom to get good. Sorry.
That's right. No, good. Yell all you want, man.
Don't play.
What do you want to say in closing before I wrap this up? Thanks for coming on. Thanks for working with me on time. It's just
Oh,
been wonderful.
oh,
Super treat.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say I hope all you teachers out there have a great summer and are ready in the fall. Um, I know summer beach reading doesn't usually look like this, but it could. It's a it's a fast read. So buy one, share it with your friends. I'd love to have a whole school full of teachers buy it, but I'd also love if they bought one copy and shared it. I just want to get the message out. And thank
Love it.
you, Peter, for helping me do that.
My pleasure. I'm going to send that. I'm going to buy one for one of my friends who is assistant superintendent of a gigantic Southern California school district, and so
Wow,
that'll be my big swing. Yeah, yeah,
that's awesome.
and she's awesome.
What? Which
I'd
district?
be lying. I'd be lying if I told you, but it's south of me, and I'm in Orange County. So she's like probably in one of the
Oh,
big
you're in.
San Diego.
Oh, okay. Oh, so this is San Diego. Oh, okay. Wow,
Yeah,
that's nice.
probably. Yeah, 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 yeah. But she handles a different part of it. But man, the administration part, it's easy to get hard looking up at the administrators, but then you talk to them, and not just her, other people that I know that are in that work,
Yeah.
and they have an extraordinarily hard job. It's just
Oh, yeah. Well, I've
yeah,
had the good fortune to get to know some of them, and like as human beings, as equals. In fact, one of the guys I put in the acknowledgement, he's principal at Crenshaw High School now, which is
mm,
pretty well known school. Um, and but he actually thanked when he got the job. He called me and said, "I want to thank you. Like you mentored me. I'm the teacher, but I mentored him because
yeah,
I I used to talk to when he was our assistant principal at our school. I used to talk to him about like how to deal with teachers. Like, I used to say, we all know that that students need to feel themselves and they,
oh, we're about to use up all the words.
you know, by
Yeah,
by telling them what they're doing wrong. Yeah, like so he really showed me a lot of appreciation, and I learned a lot from him and from other administrators. In fact, one of the chapters in the book is called "Be an Ally with Administrators." Like,
yeah,
you gotta be a partner with parents and an ally with administrators. I mean, some of them are beyond doing that, but you always approach it as like, hey, we're in this together. We're trying to achieve the same objective, and let's work together. And it's not that hard. I mean,
yeah,
I my principal now is not perfect. He's there's things I would like him to do differently, but he's a human being,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I know he has a lot of pressure on him too. I know, I see it. I see, like,
yeah,
what they're up against. So, it's yeah, I'm glad you appreciate it too. It's a thankless
yeah,
job. I mean, I've thought of getting into administration. I
yeah,
almost did it at one point, but I just, I would be miserable, like not working directly with the kids. That's what makes the job a joy, and
yeah.
they don't get to do that.
Mm,
They have all the weight on their shoulders. I used to be an athletic director, and I'd sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Oh, did I order a bus for that game tomorrow?" "Oh,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
that guy shit, that kid who played, who got hurt, was his
Yeah.
physical cleared by the nurse?"
Right.
Like, you
Oh
worry,
my
like,
God.
I'm responsible for this. There's a liability that's gonna come
Yeah.
with that. Principals, administrators have that 100-fold.
Oh,
Everything that
yeah.
happens to those kids in that building falls on them. even when they leave school till they get home, they're
Hmm.
so, you know, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, I have appreciation and
I watched.
admiration.
I watched. I know we're going to quit, but I got to go one more time. I know. I watched Breakfast Club the other day because, of course, classic movie from our generation, and it's wonderful and everything else.
Oh yeah,
And it occurs to me that John Bender, John Bender, the teacher, I can't remember his name right now. You
Hughes.
know,
Oh,
y-
okay,
yeah, John Hughes made it, but the teacher in the who runs the Saturday
right.
school, um,
Oh, right,
you know,
right, right.
he's probably cagier than he's made out to be in the movie. So if you told it from his point of view, and he's like, those little shits over there, they're talking, they're fixing each other. I'm just going to continue to play this bad guy, you know? And here's the other thing I know about administration in school. If you get
Mm,
127 Saturday schools because you're a shithead kid, they're going to forget about all that stuff in the summer. And then everything's going to be reset. They don't hang that over your head for 4 years. They're just like, oh, whatever. And it goes away. But it'd be interesting to see, like, what it looks like from the teacher's point of view when they see. Because I know, like commanders, when you go to training, when you get to a certain level, it's like my job is to play the commander at this exercise. I know we're going to get blown up because otherwise we don't get the lesson. So I'm going to be the cocksure commander, and I'll take
mm,
the chewing because
right,
from my commander, because that's my job, is to make sure these guys are ready. And these guys are here to train us. And if we defeat their training because we're so good, then it doesn't. Nobody wants that. It's like a kid failing high school. Nobody wants that. And so it'd be funny to see some of those movies where the headmaster is this monster, and it turns out wonderful dude who loves kids, loves his job, is hyper talented, and that's how he
right,
got his job. But you just see it from the kids' point of view all the time. And so just
right,
I think Breakfast Club is a good example of that, where maybe he's like, look at that, these guys are doing something amazing, and he's there listening the whole time or whatever.
right. Yeah, perception is everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, for real, I'm gonna turn this thing off. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
I'll say goodbye to you in a second. Everybody else, have a good night.